to Extraordinary Women, a podcast where everyday women talk about the extraordinary things they've achieved in their lives. With me, your host, Denise O'Brien. Welcome, everybody, to this month's edition of Extraordinary Women. I'm your host, Denise O'Brien, and this podcast is aimed to introduce extraordinary women that I've had the pleasure of meeting in some shape or form and bring them to you, the audience, and help to open the discussion on female representation in business and how these extraordinary women made it to where they are today. I am so excited to have Gina London with me. Hello, Gina.
Hello, Denise. Hello, everyone.
You are so very welcome, and thank you for coming on to the podcast. So, folks, Gina, for those of you who may not know who Gina is an American entrepreneur, and she's based in Dublin, where she founded and serves as CEO of her company called The Language of Leadership. Gina guides companies and especially C-level executives around how to better connect and engage with their employees, their board members, and of course themselves. Her repertoire is extensive. So her Fortune 500 clients in the past and in present have included Salesforce, JP Morgan, Oracle, Google, Coca-Cola, all the big names. And what I find fascinating as well is that Gina was a Fox and CNN a news anchor, which she won an Emmy-award for. So I'd love to talk to Gina about that today. And she also writes for the Sunday Independent in her column, The Communicator. So, wow, Gina, I had the pleasure of meeting you at a Network Ireland Limerick event. And folks, I witnessed Gina do a talk that I was just, it was outstanding. It was like a class in excellence around public speaking, if you don't mind me saying that, Gina. I just thought it was amazing to see you in action. But I know someone doesn't start out at that level when they step into the arena and try and make it on the speaker circuit or in business. So maybe you could take us back and tell us a little bit about where it all began for you and what your story of origin is.
Sure, absolutely. And, I was thinking about this as you and I were talking before we got started on the official record button. The idea that leaders or impactful people or successful people or whatever you want to call them, how do they start? And I was thinking, well, everybody starts as an ordinary person, even the kids of celebrities or business successful business people, if they're given kind of a thought of a leg up, they still start with maybe feeling like they're in the shadow of that celebrity or that successful parent in that particular case, or they start out as they're on that ordinary track. And I'm certainly one who started on the ordinary track. I don't have a family that came from wealth. I don't have any parent that was famous. Sometimes people say, oh, are you related to Julie London, the singer, I guess, from the 60s? And the answer is no. Were you related to the famous American author, Jack London? The answer is no. I certainly don't have any claim to the city or any of the royal inhabitants there either. And I think the thing that people have in common, though, that do eventually make it or become a success or get invited on your podcast is they have a dream. And they start little by little to work toward that dream. And for me, I was a kid growing up in a small town in Indiana. So anybody who's listening right now from a village in Ireland, if you think you need to be from Dublin or you need to be from Galway or some city, I don't think that's true. The name of my town, as you know from when I gave my presentation in person a few weeks ago, it's called Farmland. So it's exactly what it is. You can picture it in your mind, folks. My dad was a pilot for a small corporation. He sadly died in a plane crash when I was 11 years old. 2 weeks before Christmas, my mom was 34 years old. She was not working full time with myself and my brother and my sister when my dad died. And she had to go back to school and got her master's. Actually, she did have an undergrad, but she hadn't been using it. So I remember what it was like to suddenly go from kind of an idyllic, although not rich by any means childhood. We had great little walks in the forest, and we had Christmas times and dinners and things like that any normal average family would do. And then suddenly you're that family. You're the one in a town where everybody goes, oh, you know her dad, or oh, the teachers would be extra nice to you because they felt sorry for you, or oh, the neighbors would come and bring a covered dish for dinner because they felt sorry for my mom. And it was really hard.
Mm.
And I watched my mom get up every morning and make the breakfast for us and get us off to school. And she wasn't perfect by any means. There were plenty of times where she cried and she expressed her frustration like a normal human being would, but I watched her persevere. So I think role models are important.
Mm-hmm.
The dream I had as a kid, then my mom, because she went back to school, and I had initially thought of her, Denise, as kind of just that stay-at-home mom in a robe and slippers. And I didn't really kind of respect her the way I grew to after my dad died. And watching her get us off to school and then go to school herself at the local university, which was a good 35 minutes away to the bigger town of Muncie, Indiana.
Wow.
And I watched that woman go because she had to. And that gave me perseverance. And I also thought, well, what do I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I loved to read as a kid. And I liked the idea of newspapers and that kind of, I would love to read the stories of these far-flung places. And I got excited about where I might be able to go outside of farmland, maybe through the vehicle of journalism. And so I majored in journalism. And I didn't have any thought about who else had, I mean, I read stories of other women who were broadcasters and journalists, and they inspired me, but I certainly didn't have anybody in my family who did that. My mom's second degree was in speech and hearing for deaf children.
Oh, wow.
And so lovely. And I learned a lot from her and watching her, but that wasn't a field I wanted to go into. And so for anyone out there listening, you have role models as children that are positive, and you also have some cautionary tales that you want to avoid, but try to put your focus on the role models.
Mm-hmm.
Try to identify a dream and be not afraid to explore too. I mean, if someone had told me, well, you're from farmland, Indiana, and you don't have any connections and you don't have any easy path to get to what you want to do, I might have stopped even dreaming or thinking about it. But I didn't. And little by little, I think you can begin to go for them. And it's okay if you don't have them clearly defined when you're a kid, like I happen to. I think being open to new experiences is another thing that will lead you in different directions. And hopefully we have many chapters in our life so you can try out different things. But don't think because you weren't born into something that you don't have a chance. And also, if you were born into a family of significance for whatever reason, I think sometimes that also might be even harder because you have to work out from beyond or around the shadow of someone who might have come before.
Sure. Okay. Okay, so a lot there in terms of your mom. So she sounds like she was an excellent role model for, as you said, that bit of tenacity, perseverance, resilience, and focus, I would say, going back to college, after that traumatic experience. And I really like what you're saying there, Gina, about having some kind of a dream and just being, sometimes we're brave enough or just not enough well informed about it to just keep going and just, make it kind of happen as we're going along. So would you say that were you lucky, or like were you in the right places at the right time? It was a combination of hard work. I mean, what brought you into your career then in the media and journalism?
I think it's always a combination of all of the three. I think anybody who puts everything to hard work is probably not being fair to the people who've been given a lot of hard work into a situation and for whatever reason hasn't had the same doors being open. So by no means do I say it's only hard work. There is luck and timing to anything, and I think that's fair. There are certainly amazing singers out there that will never have the fame or impact of a Taylor Swift. That's nothing to take away from her. But let's be honest, it's a population of 8 billion people. There is no equation that tells me that the people who are perceived successful by their external means of finance or impact or celebrity are the only ones that are out there doing great things. So that's the first comment. Secondly, though, yeah, I did work. And I can remember another thing too is I talked about it a lot. So what do you want to do? I want to be a reporter. I want to be a journalist. I want to be, once I got into the first television station, I want to be on air, which is different than I want to be a producer or I want to be a writer. So talk it up, because if you keep your dream in, if you have a dream first and then you just keep it inside, well, then you're probably not going to necessarily surround yourself with people who will maybe make another introduction to you or maybe give you some helpful advice. I think it's important to not put your light under a little bushel until you're waiting for it to be that perfect moment, because you're not going to be fully formed probably until right before you have your last breath. So have a dream, first of all. Just last week with a new videographer and his assistant, we were doing some shoots for the social media content, never ending requirement. And his assistant, I was just meeting him. I said, "Hey, so what's the big dream?" And he says, "Oh, I should have one, huh?" And he was probably late 20s. And I thought, isn't it interesting how you can maybe bounce around in your life? And it's okay if that's happy for you. But I think a lot of people, when they get to a certain place, they go, am I coasting or am I trying to direct? So there's going to be luck, and there's going to be that one person that you talk to that's going to introduce you to somebody else. But then also, if a door does get open, you have to walk through it yourself.
Exactly.
So you have to be able I don't think I'm the best at what I do, for sure, but I do feel that I am accomplished and experienced at this point where I can hold my head up. But I also know that there are plenty of times where I walked through a door and thought, man, I have probably 60% of what's required here, but I'm going to do it anyway. We're going to learn and we'll see what happens. And I think there is that whole adage of you can, go through life or you can grow through life. And I'm definitely committed and passionate about the idea that when you have a dream and you start talking it up and you start learning whatever your practice is in order to get better at it, then over time, that talk and those connections and those skills will begin to pay a dividend. What dividend, I don't know, but I know certainly if you don't go for it, you'll have zero chance of achieving it, whatever it is.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's something like materialization of your dreams and that whole manifestation. I think there's something to that when you talk it into existence, or you start saying out loud, yes, I do. I would like to be on air, or yes, I would like to, be that anchor in that, and start to have that dream.
I believe that idea with a caveat where I certainly don't think there is no evidence that the universe is going to put things into action for us. The universe is a dispassionate set of molecules and atoms. You can get into quantum and energy theory with me on another podcast.
Yeah.
But that said, what you are saying, if you are saying it out loud, I don't care if the mountains don't hear me or do hear me. What I do care is if the people on those mountains hear me, because the law of attraction, if you want to call it that, which a lot of people make a lot about, but let's just break it down to what it is. Are you connecting with people who can introduce you to someone else, who can introduce you to someone else, you can also provide value to, hopefully in some way, and then they in return. And so relationships are my manifestation.
Okay. And if somebody was to come to you for advice who is looking to, get into journalism, let's go back to your earlier part of your career. What kind of avenue would people need to take in Ireland? I mean, do you know anything about the media here or how to broach that?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm a media an analyst on all of the networks here, pretty much. I mean, news talk. I mean, it's a small country, folks. So you've got your RTE and you've got your Virgin TV, and then you've got your news talk and you've got your RTE radio, and then there's a bunch of other little ones, but they're almost all owned by conglomerates, I think, at this point. But certainly, wherever you're starting out, if you're wanting to get into journalism or you're wanting to get into media in some sort, I think there is a requirement for a degree. That's one. So go into some sort of a field of study. It doesn't have to be a 4-year diploma necessarily. There are other diplomas around in this particular country I'm aware of. And then when you receive that, also there are internships. So certainly start looking into the internship programs. My daughter is 16 years old in the TY program at her secondary school / high school.
Yeah.
And so work experience already is being fostered and cultivated and encouraged, which is fantastic. So don't wait again until you're fully formed. Go start small. If you have an opportunity, take it. I don't talk about this much because you can't have a CV that's littered with every little thing. But when I first moved to Washington, D.C., and I was working at the Fox affiliate first, which was a major top 10 television station in news. So that was a pretty good achievement, but I was only writing. I wasn't on air. And there was a community county channel, like cable access, that someone recommended. Why don't you go and hang out with them? Volunteer.
Yeah.
But I did. So I'm working overnights in the local Fox station. And then I was going in the afternoon and filing a story with them. Now, it turned out that I ended up getting another writing job over at the network at CNN. And that I left the local county station to go obviously work at the bureau as a freelancer. And that was the path that I ended up going. But I did have an opportunity to start to turn some packages at Montgomery County. And so though that was an opportunity. And had I snubbed my nose or something and said, oh, no, I can't do that, I mean, it might have missed some more moments to continue to grow in that area. So say yes. There's a lot out there about, oh, say no and don't spread yourself too thin. But when you're starting out, you're probably younger for one. So say yes, because you've got more physicality and vitality that you can do these types of. I was at one point working overnight at the Fox station as a writer producer. And then I was coming after the show was over at 9 a.m., the morning news I was writing for, Denise, I would get in. I leave my car in the parking lot there at the south part of Washington, D.C. I'd get into the metro, take the metro over to the CNN bureau, which is about a 30-minute metro ride, come up from Union Station, go over to the CNN bureau, look at the freelance writing list for that day, and write the different shows like the Nooncast and the international program, and even Inside Politics, which was a program that did not get over until 8 p.m. that night.
Wow.
And then I'd go back on the metro, back to the parking lot, get in my car, go home, sleep for like 4 hours, get up at midnight and do it again. Now, that is not sustainable, but you can do it for a while. And that's what actually ended up opening the opportunity for me, because CNN was aware that I was also working full time at the local station. The local station was then aware that I was doing freelance writing over at CNN. And they were both kind of impressed with my craziness at that point.
Work ethic.
And then that led to more doors being open. So work hard and do talk to a lot of people and take those opportunities and don't be a snob.
Great. Okay. So folks, we're getting a lot of insights and gems here from Gina. So you're talking about, you had an inspirational role model, you worked hard, you put yourself in the way of opportunity. You said yes to things. And I like that idea of not having to be fully formed before you go and do something. And I'm certainly experiencing that now as well. Myself, even just trying out new things, different media, print, radio, new experiences, coming out of the comfort zone. So what would you say in that part of your career, Gina, like what was the pinnacle? Like, did you ever have a moment where you're like, okay, I have arrived?
Well, certainly the first live shot from the White House is a blowaway moment where I remember the very first time I arrived in Washington, D.C., because again, I grew up in a small town, and coming to the nation's capital was in of itself. And I wasn't even working in TV news. I was working at the Democratic Party at that point. But you come up from that metro station like a little whack-a-mole coming out of a hole, and you emerge, and then there's the Capitol Dome right in front of you as you get off of the Capitol Metro. And it's amazing. And standing in front of the White House doing a live shot, interviewing a president is amazing. Going to the popes, big gathering out was a scrum of other journalists, but I wasn't the only one. But still, it was fascinating to be like right that close to the leader of the whole, Catholic Church. Going, I think, well, of course, it was devastating to be at 9/11 because we were there at ground zero and we were there for weeks and weeks, and that was horrific. And at that point, I'd been with CNN for quite some time. I think for me, being in the White House press briefing room that first time was just a blow away moment. And on and on. Oh, I think one time they used to have, now they don't do it because everybody's on their phones, but CNN used to be in every airport. You'd come into the gate and there'd be a television station and they would have the ongoing news from CNN Airports channel, believe it or not. And I remember one time running with my crew to something, we were going to go fly to some event or news something. And I looked up and I'm actually on air. It was a package that I had done and recorded, obviously. And you look up and you're on every television station as you're running through the airport. So these little things, those were kind of fun moments. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. And so taking you then into your next phase of your career, what did you bring with you from your experience in journalism and all of those television experiences that you had into
thank you for this one, Denise. Thank you, because moving in from journalism to the corporate executive world was a jump for me in my mind, because I had never worked in corporate land, and all of these businessy people and these executives, it seemed like, and it was a whole other world. And the first time I was asked to work with these three executives from SAP SAP in their headquarters in Germany, I was intimidated. They asked me to help them with presentation skills and media training. And I thought, I can get that. But then they also said, we want you to help us with our executive presence. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. That sounds elusive and fake. And what are you talking about?
Okay.
And what I learned through that experience was that the rigors of 24-hour news, being able to stand for 15 hours at a time and generate that same energy that you had for live shot 1 that you're doing for live shot 120. And you're modifying the story as it unfolds and as the audiences and the networks that you're speaking to would be changed, or 2 seconds before you're going to go on live, the person in the gallery or the control room says, we're actually not going to take that pre-recorded package you prepared. We want you to do a live Q&A, and here's the angle. And you're going, keeping that face going, okay. And in your head, you're going, oh my God. I mean, so that ability to tell story, to keep looking composed or appropriate to the content of the story, to think on your feet quickly, to never let them see you sweat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which I had not unpacked as individually identified skills at that point.
Okay.
But once I was asked to begin to do this, it required me then to stop, unpack, identify, learn how to make them transferable. And then repack. And that's really where the journey of this whole idea of purposeful leadership communications affecting your essence, of course, executive presence, became part of my now holistic approach to how we can take more ownership of how we communicate, how we look, how we behave, not to be superficial, but to take more control of things that you might think are not as controllable as they are.
I think who better than somebody like you to share that inside knowledge with, executives, because nowadays so much is expected of leaders. I don't know if you find that, but
100%. I couldn't agree more. Keep going. Yes.
Yeah, it's like there's all of the marketplace conditions, and then there's the pressure to show up, to lead, to take people through, a significant amount of change. And then the nature, the employee the workforce itself is changing, the different age
cohort. The workforce, I agree. The workforce is expecting you, especially the young people. I mean, we've got Gen Z coming online now, right?
Yeah.
They have only they're the digital natives.
Yes.
They have only been accustomed to sound bites from celebrities as they're going and scrolling. So if you cannot be clear and brief as a leader, they're not going to be able to keep their attention. That's just a fact.
Wow.
Second of all, if you don't come across as transparent and caring, if you look like you are reading a script because you are, or you look like or you sound like you're delivering canned corporate speech because you are, they're going to know it. And not just them, all of us as humans now. I think we are not okay with the CEO or the senior leader who stays in their exalted tower and isn't reachable and isn't approachable and is just back behind some closed door doing strategy or thinking about the shareholders or whatever they do. Now they have to come out from behind that desk out into the rooms, virtually or in person, and not just affect that I care about you, but start to cultivate their genuine compassion. Because if we don't feel it as an employee, we're going to go somewhere else where we are seen and we are heard and we are valued. And I think that is the marketplace today.
Yeah, I really couldn't agree more with you. I think there's like a level of transformational leadership required where the leader has to dig deep to show up. And I think they have to do inner work on themselves.
Yes.
Present that way. I don't know if you found that with the work you do.
I completely agree. I was working with the CEO of a big aviation leasing company here in Ireland, which will remain nameless, a few years ago. And he could tell you everything 6 ways from Sunday about aviation leasing, but he was preparing. The reason I had been called in, he was preparing to deliver a speech before a lot of different sectors of leaders from all over different parts of the country, I think, but still different industries.
Yeah.
And I said, what have you prepared so far? And he started rattling off all these statistics about the aviation industry. And I said, well, that's great for about 2 minutes. Yeah. And then your audience is going to be bored unless you're really interested in that. They want to know, how is it going to impact our life? What stories do you have that are interesting for me? I'd like to know the first story of your first coach or your first mentor. And he said, oh, you're going to make me do this values work, huh?
Okay.
I said, yeah, I am. And it was amazing the way his speech was changed and became much more about him personally and what's impacted him. And the more he reflected, the more he got excited about it. Thank goodness, because not everybody is open to that. There are certainly old command and control style of people. I had one CEO tell me, I said, what do you think about corporate culture? Yeah. Honestly, what are your thoughts? He says, well, a democracy is a great idea, but a dictatorship gets things done.
Okay. Wow.
And I thought, well, I wonder how long that's going to serve you.
Exactly. For how long? Yeah.
In today's environment, that is not a sustainable equation. And it can sound great. And you can say, oh, let me point to this leader or this leader and give you an example of someone who is clearly dogmatic and a dictator and authoritarian. And I can also say, watch that space.
Yeah. Where does it bring?
Because that's it. That's it.
Absolutely. And in terms of you yourself today, Gina, like, how do you do what you do? I mean, you have to show up, you have to give this energy to everybody, what makes you tick and what motivates you? Tell me.
Thank you. Thank you. I will honestly say that sometimes it's not easy when you're doing your song and dance for business development. And let me just remind everybody that when you're in the entrepreneurial world, if you're running a small business, you are only good as your last gig, or only as good as the product or service that you most recently have closed on or have sold, because you have to continue to build pipeline. So I have to continue to meet new leadership and development directors in different countries and different organizations. I have to go back to the clients I've served previously and see how things are going and see if there's ways that I can add value. And the shelf life of a consultant is not forever, because that executive that you may work with 1, 2, maybe even 3 years is going to move on. It happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I have great friends who I started with as clients, but they're not paying me anymore. So where do I get it? I have a great team, thankfully.
Good.
I have 3 people full-time on the payroll. It's not a lot, but it is an actual team that I have a number of vendors that I continue to work with, and they also keep me supported, and we keep each other connected, which is great. Excellent. Then when I do have clients and I get great feedback, which thankfully I regularly do,
and imagine that
also reminds you that it's worth it. I think that's one, like, how do people that are in the service industry, especially, or coaches or mentors or people that are doing the kind of work that I do, leaders need to have their reservoirs filled too. And that's important. So sometimes I work with other coaches. I have collaborators around the world that I do work with, and that helps feed us collectively. So that is something. And I love, by the way, I work out 3 times a week with a personal trainer. So the mental and physical connection is really powerful. And I do yoga about every night a week over at the Yoga Hub in BlackRock. So if you're in South County, Dublin, come and join me at the Yoga Hub.
Lovely. Oh, wow. Okay. So it takes a village to raise a child. And I think as a female entrepreneur in business, we need the support around us. We need good support. Yeah.
Yeah. We have to. I think none of us fly solo.
Yeah. You're as good as the support that you have and all the experience that you bring to the table. So I suppose to close out then, Gina London, what is the dream for you at the moment? Where are you headed?
Oh gosh, thank you. I am finally, I believe, at the light at the end of the tunnel portion of one of my longest goals that I hadn't yet achieved, which is to write the business book.
Wow.
That I hope will help package a lot of these things that I say, the idea that these small things can have big impact and that you can take more control of them. And so that I signed with the publisher just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm very much in for 2024 to have that wrapped up and on a bookshelf coming near you.
That is amazing.
So I'm excited about that. I think that's, like any of us, I think everybody has a book in them. Some have more than others. And I just want to be able to add my flavor and package to the conversation about important conversations. And so that's the goal for that. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, congratulations. I think so many people listening to this will be interested in what you have to say, because it's just a fascinating combination, your work, your life experience, your work experience, bringing it into a different industry, showing people all the transferable skills that you gained from all that hard work, and good fortune, that you had along the way. So I look forward to reading the book. So any final last words for our listeners before we finish up for today?
Yes, I think for anybody out there listening and they think, oh, I could do X, or I wish I would do Y. Stop thinking about it and just do one tiny, tiny little thing. Write one email to someone that you would like to have a coffee with, or you'd like to learn more about, or like Denise said, hey, would you do this podcast?
Yeah.
Someone told me once, we start at no, or we're already at a no before we ask. So it can't get any worse than what it is. So try. And then if I had $1 for every Zoom call or every outreach that I had that didn't go anywhere, I would be super wealthy. And yet, if I don't try, I don't know. And then there is that one that hits. And I mean, I've been going to Saudi Arabia for the last 3 years through an initial LinkedIn outreach to a stranger that has become a business partner and in many ways a friend.
There you go.
And so try and take that little step. Don't see, what did they say? Don't look at the elephant. Just how do you eat an elephant? Just one little bite at a time, right? Exactly. So don't look at the whole mountain. Just start at the baseline and take one baby step forward.
Fantastic. Well, those are exceptional words of wisdom from an extraordinary woman. Gina London, thank you for your time and thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you, Denise, for asking me.
You've been listening to Extraordinary Women with Denise O'Brien and guests. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, please contact me directly at denise@o'brienlearningsolutions.ie or check out my website www.o'brienlearningsolutions.ie, where you'll find more free resources and interesting articles. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to spread the word and get in touch if you are an extraordinary woman who would like to share her story.